Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Planning Committee at Derbyshire District Council. There will, as far as I know, there will not be a fire alarm test, so please, if you do hear the alarm, please leave through the double doors, go down the stairs, out the main door, and go to the far back of the car park. You are being recorded on YouTube. If for any reason none of you want to be recorded, then please let the committee clerk know and she'll edit or try and edit you out. So anyway, we'll move on to the agenda. So item 1 is apologies and substitutes.
No apologies tonight, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 2, approval of minutes of the previous meeting. I so move.
Second, Chair.
All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Item 3, interests. Any interests, Councillor?
Yes, some of the correspondence which has been received after the preparation of the agenda has come from Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, and I work for Derbyshire Wildlife Trust.
Thank you. Right, well in which case then we will move straight on to the full body of the committee. So it's application 4.1. This is application number 19/00712. It's a full application. It's for erection of 5 number industrial units, commercial buildings with associated new access and landscape at the west of Blackrocks Business Park, Porter Lane, Wirksworth. There is some late representation, so I'll let you read the late representations first. Right, members, we got there. Anyway, we have one speaker on this. This is Mr. Richard Piggott, is the agent. 5 minutes to speak, and I'll let you know when you've got 30 seconds up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak today. RG Millwoods are a local company specialising in civil engineering and groundworks, together with quarrying and factory services for the past 40 years. They own the application site and are currently based in the industrial unit immediately to the east. The company is rapidly expanding and plans to relocate into units 4 and 5. 2 of the smaller units have confirmed users for the likely expansion of Derbyshire concrete and intelligent vending, and the applicant considers another highly skilled company would fit well within the third unit. These larger units also have the potential for subdivision. I commend the officer report for its detailed analysis of the proposal. As stated in the report, the principle of the development is acceptable with the allocation of the site in the adopted local plan under policy EC2H. Unusually for an application like this, there have been no objections from local residents or parish councils. However, following the receipt of a number of concerns since the application was submitted in June, we have worked hard with the planning officer and third parties to address these concerns. With regards to highways, the site is well connected to the bus network, and a pavement will be added along the northern side of Porter Lane to connect the site to the existing bus stop. Car parking is now more evenly distributed across the site, and condition 15 will control the future addition of mezzanine floor levels, which could impact on parking requirements. In terms of ecology, whilst both Natural England and Derbyshire Wildlife Trust initially objected, these concerns have now been addressed. The amended plan sets the proposed northern boundary hedge to the site at the edge of the development. This will retain more of the meadow area and the local wildlife site around the footpath. Derbyshire Wildlife Trust have now confirmed that they are now happy for development to be approved, subject to a number of conditions. Natural England's concern has been reviewed to reflect their comments on the site adjacent to the existing industrial estate, which is itself being currently considered for outline planning permission. To this end, Natural England has requested a condition be attached to seek to ensure appropriate measures are in place during the construction of the development to ensure no harm is caused to the SAC or the SSSI. With regard to drainage, the local lead flood authority has not objected, and the FRA notes that this area of Derbyshire is generally known for being well draining. The owner of the site has confirmed that fill used on site in the capping off of the mining shafts was clean limestone in order to maintain the permeability of the site. The site is therefore likely to be suitable for infiltration. The existing building at Blackrocks Business Park that was constructed in 2005 discharges to soakaway under the yard area, confirming that infiltration should be feasible. In terms of visual impact, the design will integrate the Phase 1 buildings with the Mount Cook Centre and the Phase 2 buildings with the existing industrial estate. Additional landscaping is proposed both around the edges of the site and within it in order to break up the areas of buildings and hard landscaping. Topsoil from the site will be retained and used in the landscaped areas because of its likely content of appropriate seeds for the site conditions and particular characteristics appropriate to the location and its historical use as a lead mine. We support Council's green agenda and believe that the proposal represents a sustainable form of development. Significant new landscaping is proposed, and the proposal will result in a net gain in biodiversity. The applicants themselves will carry out the construction work, meaning local labour and materials will be used for the majority of the works. The site is also next to a bus route and the High Peak Trail, meaning it is sustainably located. I would now like to remind you of the benefits of the scheme. The site is allocated for employment use, and the development of high quality commercial buildings will aid the expansion of the applicant's business, create new jobs both in the construction phase and once the development is complete, and also help to meet Derbyshire Dales' employment land need. Whilst this is a sensitive site, it is considered that the proposals address these concerns, and that the result
30 seconds left.
And that the result will be a high quality scheme which assimilates well into the landscape and delivers significant employment benefits to the area. You are therefore invited to follow the advice of your officers and approve the application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Is there anything you'd like to come back on, Chris?
Just briefly, Chair, a number of points have been raised by the previous speaker. Members have visited the site this afternoon to consider the impacts of this development. Just to reiterate that it's an allocated site in the 2017 local plan for employment development. The allocation is for 0.9 hectares of B1, A, B and C uses and also B2 uses, so a range of light industrial and general industrial uses. This application involves a little over 0.9 hectares of land for such purposes. It does fully utilise the site for the range of uses that are permitted or promoted as part of the local plan process, so is considered to be acceptable in principle. We considered the development as presented. We looked at the site from the main road and the main point of access into the site, the implications on the roadside hedge. Just to point out to members, it's in the report, but the site is within the buffer zone for the Derwen Valley Mills World Heritage Site. We have a local wildlife site immediately to the north of the site, public footpath, and we also have a site of, or a special area of conservation, which is a European designated site, which is afforded protection, also a triple SI, the gang mine site beyond the local wildlife reserve to the north of Dark Lane. We're happy with the application as presented in terms of the impact it has on the character and appearance of its surroundings, and with appropriate conditions we're recommending approval of the application. Happy to take questions at this stage.
Thanks, Chris. Members, on to questions. Councillor Purley.
Thank you, Chair. This is in my ward and I'm happy with it in principle. I've got no strong objection to it on the basis of seeing the amended reports coming in from DWT, for example, to protect the highly sensitive area. But an issue was raised on site which I would like Chris to answer and assure me on, and that was with connection to one of the material planning issues on drainage. There did seem to be some big question mark on that. Chris, can you enlighten us, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Purdy. Drainage is a constraint on this particular site. You'll note from the consultation responses received that we've got responses from the Environment Agency, and the Environment Agency are concerned about potential contaminants from the site discharging into an aquifer. Particularly, we've got particular concerns about infiltration of surface water into the ground. The applicant, as part of this application, proposes infiltration through the ground, and there is a slight concern there that if infiltration is not possible because the Environment Agency won't allow it, then we need to think about how surface water from the site is going to be discharged. Severn Trent Water have advised that the local sewer network is at capacity and that discharge into the sewer should be considered as a last resort. So I think reflecting on conditions and conditions specifically about infiltration and surface water drainage, I think we need to have a fallback position there that if infiltration is not possible, we need to consider other sustainable urban drainage systems or methods before we consider discharge into the public sewer, and that corresponds with advice that we've had from the lead local flood authority.
Thank you, Chris. Well, I mean, that concerns me. I don't know what other members think, but I think on the basis that if we approve this, I don't feel I've got any comfort in that the drainage issues will be guaranteed by some constituent authority, and I would want to see those guarantees before I give my approval. As I say, I agree with it in principle, and I'm happy to welcome new employment to our area. I'm sure it will be a well-developed site, and with the conditions applied and the stringent checks on it as it goes forward. But I'm sorry, I would have to sort of consider deferment on this one to get more reassurances on that very issue. I'm happy to hear what other members think about that, but I'm happy to move a deferment, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Pawley.
Yes, Chair, I've got three questions actually. In 712, Derbyshire Wildlife has considered the proposals, and there's a whole list of specific wildflowers and rare grasses and insects that live adjacent to the site, not on the site. I'm wondering if there are any actually on the site, and what's going to happen if there are. Are we going to try and do something to preserve them? Particularly, I live near Rosen Meadows Reservation, and there's rare orchids and things on there specific to lead mining sites. I'm wondering if you've gone into that in any detail about the land that we're thinking they're presenting on, not the one adjacent. That's
Yep.
the first question. The second one is, could the height of the hedge on 41 be retained behind the buildings rather than cut back and used as a more sort of an urban look? And the third one is, it seems to be this problem with the water retention anyway, and we've been told that the water runs off and drains naturally down into the lead mines. But if we're going to put large areas of concrete down for parking, that's not going to happen so easily. So I'm wondering if there are any other materials that could be used for the areas that vehicles, particularly these heavy vehicles, go over. Is there any way we could not use concrete or tarmac surfacing? Those are the three questions.
Okay, just addressing those questions in order that they were raised. The local wildlife site is the Dark Lane spoil heap site, just to the south of Dark Lane. The site itself doesn't actually include the application site, it's just immediately to the north of the site.
Yeah, I see that.
And as part of this application, a buffer area is proposed to introduce planting.
I'm not talking about that site, I quite understood that. What I'm saying is, are there any plants, rare plants or insects on the site itself that we're talking about, and are we going to do anything to protect them if there are?
There are important species on that site. The proposal, though, doesn't have any doesn't result in any net harm to those species. We're satisfied that there is net biodiversity gain in this case because we're introducing new planting, we're protecting that existing area, so we are enhancing, if you like, that particular site, and hence why we're happy with the revised proposal and the revised scheme that's been presented. Second question, the hedge. Members will note from site that we have a revised layout, and what we haven't got is an up-to-date section through the site, and I think it's vitally important that we secure, and you'll see in the late representation sheets, sections through the site that clearly indicate the height of buildings relative to the road, and then we can assess the impact that any hedge, whether it's retention of that hedge or a new hedge, will have on filtering views of the new buildings. The hedge itself will be maintained largely at its current height. There is a landscaping condition proposed as part of the application. What we've got to bear in mind is the access itself will form a break through the hedge. The requisite visibility displays will require the hedge to be set back behind the visibility display, which may require the hedge being removed for a section or even trimmed back to some extent. So there will be some impacts on the hedge, but through new supplementary planting and new maintenance of the hedgerow that can be retained, we consider that will provide appropriate filter of the development that's proposed. Water retention, the last question. The proposal is for infiltration, so infiltration of surface water into the ground. So as part of that, they'll be looking at permeable surfacing. So it wouldn't be a case of if infiltration is allowed and the Environment Agency are happy with that, you could look at all sorts of things to ensure infiltration through hard standing areas. You could have an unbound surface that would allow infiltration into the ground without having it sealed and run off onto other parts of the site.
Is there going to be a condition there?
I think it's condition 5, which deals specifically with the infiltration issue.
I haven't picked up on that. Sorry.
Councillor Donnelly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This afternoon I asked about GFS, excuse me, and we're told that there was only a desktop exercise was done. Now, that concerns me a little bit because experience of desktop exercise, I don't think is that accurate. So it was mine to, if Councillor Purdy would mind to defer it, I'd be happy to second that.
Thank you very much. Any more, Councillor Ball?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I am quite wary of this drain-off situation, and as colleagues here have stated, I would possibly go for a deferral on it to get the outcome, because we're passing something that there might not be a comeback on. But two other things, I'd like to make sure that there is a full condition on the height of the hedge that is already there. other than the bit that they have to use for the entrance. I understand they've got to make a break in it because that's where the main access in and out would be, but I don't see that any other of that hedge should be moved, so I would like to see a condition, if possible, put on that. And thirdly, on 5.12, it's about the crime officer. They've stipulated about some form of boundary. I can't really see that on there. Is the security boundary that's going to be put round there?
Just addressing both points there, there is an existing landscaping condition where we could include provision for retention of the existing roadside hedge where it doesn't interfere with the visibility displays associated with the new access. There is also, as part of condition 11, a requirement to submit details of all means of enclosure, so we'd have details of any associated fencing, and we try and ensure that fencing was appropriate to the environment.
Any more questions, members? Councillor Slapp.
My first question was related to what Councillor Purdy's been speaking about. If the Environment Agency can come up with a solution to this problem of drainage and filterisation, would that be possible, Chris? That's my first question to come along with. The second question is on landscaping. The boundary edge with Dart Lane, will it be all fawn, same as the one on Border Lane?
It's to be agreed, the hedge, as part of a landscaping scheme. But we would promote the use of native tree and hedgerow species in that location.
Yeah, so it is very important that the first question which Councillor Purdy brought forward, that it's addressed, because if water got into the mere brooks or any contamination, it could be serious.
Yeah, the issue at the moment is that infiltration is possible, provided that there is no contaminants or any issues of contaminants being leaching into that aquifer or the brook. It's if the Environment Agency are not happy that that's possible, then we've got to think about how we're going to deal with surface water discharge, and it's whether we install a system that retains surface water on site, whether that's underground storage or whether it's a balancing facility, and perhaps we need details of that.
So could that be a condition then, the Environment Agency?
It could be a condition. We could, I think, if members were minded to approve the application, we'd have to strengthen condition 5 to say that if infiltration is not possible, other sustainable urban drainage methods shall be considered and details submitted before we consider discharge into the sewer.
Thank you, Chris.
Councillor Burford.
Thank you, Chair. I am happy to go along with the referral for the reasons given, but I just wanted to flag up the car parking on the site. I didn't think this afternoon to ask about that, but Chris, could you point out where, I can't see on the conditions where it says anything about the surface being permeable. I think it's really important that we have sustainable permeable surface on any car park spaces. I can't see that.
Yeah, it's dealt with under condition 5. So the applicant has indicated that surface water will be dealt with through infiltration, and they've indicated that'll be through hard surfacing on the site and other permeable areas. So it'd be part of consideration of that condition. And then we've got in the late representation sheet comments from the Highway Authority will require the parking and manoeuvring areas as generally set out in the plan that you can see on the projector to be laid out as approved, but that wouldn't include the actual surface material. That's dealt with through the actual landscaping condition, so agreeing hard surfacing materials.
Okay, because I think that's really important. Thank you.
Right, thank you, members. Now we'll move into debate. Councillor Purdy.
Chair, there seems to be some consensus for a deferment. Before I move it, I'd like to ask Chris a question. Why have we got to this position tonight where we've got to go back to the Environment Agency to ask this question? Should this not have been on the table now?
I think it's possible to deal with it by condition. The unknown at this stage is whether infiltration is possible. If it's not possible, then I think members are entitled to seek a deferment if they would ultimately like to see, well, what will the sustainable urban drainage method on site be? Is that going to be underground tanks? Is it going to be some form of a balancing pond on the site? And you might want to see details of that. So I can understand the deferment for that reason, but it's not impossible to deal with it also through condition.
Thank you. I'm still of a mind to move it, Chair. I think it's important that we get this sorted out so that we members have knowledge of that detail before we approve. So I move for deferment on the reasons stated to officers to liaise with the Environment Agents and the applicant, and hopefully we can bring it back speedily to committee.
No,
So
second that, Chair.
seconded. Yeah, that's it. Councillor Pawley.
Yes, I'll go along with that, but not just because of the water position. I'd like to take up Councillor Donnelly's ideas about the geophys thing as well, because it's really the whole of the history of part of Cromford and the Mearsbrook stuff is so important, particularly in the Arkwright story as well. I think we don't want to get to the point where, even though I've been told this afternoon that it's being used as that Slinter Mine just used it as a depot at one time, and there's been lots of work done on it, and it's had its surface scraped back. If it's just a desk job that's been done, I'd much rather something else a bit more thorough was done on it, because of the history importance, the historical importance. So I'd like it to be on 2 reasons, not just 1.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
Thank you, Chairman. I think if we do defer it, then fine. But I think it's a great shame for the applicant, because obviously he's got a lot of passion in his business, a passion for Derbyshire, passion for employment in the Derbyshire Dales, and I really don't want him to go away with a negative thought from this particular council, because we do support him. It's just this fine paperwork or whatever it is on the drainage scheme that we've got to get right. But it's just a shame we couldn't have sorted that before tonight.
Councillor Slack.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Fitzherbert. It's a shame if we just, I'm sure it can be dealt under conditions as the officers suggested. So I'd like to echo what Councillor Fitzherbert said. It'd be a great shame if this development was put off, because it's quite a good development for the area and the workforce of the area. So I'd like to see it go ahead, but we must deal with this position under the conditions, obviously. So I'd go along with the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Hughes.
It seems to me that whatever happens, there's going to be a delay in the development of the site while the investigation happens. Therefore, it doesn't seem material that if a deferral happens, that doesn't seem to materially affect the length of time it will take to develop the site.
Anyway, it's been proposed and seconded for deferral. All those in favour, please show. That's been deferred and it's unanimous. Thank you very much. The next application is number 4.2, application 19/00455. This is an outright planning application for a residential development of 12 dwellings, with approval being sought for access at land of Millers Green, Wirksworth. There is a little bit of late representation on this, so if you'd like to wade yourself through that, and then we'll go to the speakers. Right, thank you, members. We'll start off with the speaker. The first speaker I have is Mr. Andrew Redfern from Wirksworth and Middleton Cricket Club. You have 3 minutes and I'll indicate when you've got 30 seconds left.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The recreation ground at Wirksworth is a...
Can you press your microphone, please?
Yeah. The recreation ground at Wirksworth is a centre of a lot of community activity. Contrary to what the original report said, there isn't a rugby club there, but there is a cricket club, a football club and a bowls club and a children's play area nearer to the road. And all of that is, apart from the children's play areas, is maintained by hard-working volunteers. And while we're not here to oppose or to support the application, we realise that housing is needed, we are concerned about the possibility of cricket balls flying into the gardens and the homes and potentially causing damage to people and property. And to illustrate that that can and does happen, in a different capacity, I'm a member of the Derbyshire County Cricket League Executive Committee, and we have a real problem at the moment with a ground in actually it's in East Staffordshire, or this part of the Derbyshire League, where exactly this has happened 3 or 4 years ago, and there is now a very nasty argument with solicitors involved and threats of injunctions and goodness knows what. We've got a club committee where all of the members have resigned because they've been told that they will be personally liable if there is a serious accident. So this is a problem, it does happen, and therefore we are asking, it says in the introduction to the speaker, it says we're asking for a 3-metre fence. We're actually asking for a 4-metre fence. And the reason for that is, if you think about it, a ball that passes over a boundary at low level, you know, 1 metre or 2 metres, is not very likely to do a great deal of damage. It's a higher ball that is more likely to do damage. And for that reason, we're asking for a 4-metre fence. Now, I would like to acknowledge and thank Chris and his colleagues for the work they've done on this in the last few days. I know there has been some discussion with the developer, and there is a proposal there. The proposal in terms of the maintenance requirement is absolutely acceptable, and we think fair and reasonable. Our concern is that what we really feel that a 4-metre fence is needed.
30 seconds left.
Okay, thank you. It's not possible to completely eliminate this risk, but it is possible to reduce it. And we think that a 4-metre fence will reduce the risk to a very, very much greater extent and really minimise it in a way that we don't think a 3-metre fence will.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on my list is Mr. Jonathan Jenkins. That's the agent to speak in favour of the application. And as you'll know, Jonathan, you've got 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when there's 30 seconds left.
Very kind of the Councillor, and thank you, Committee, for opportunity to speak in support of the application tonight. This application, you know, was deferred from your meeting in August in order to confirm the access details, including the configuration of the new road. This has now been agreed with the County Highways Officer, and amended drawings are before you tonight. The gradient of the existing site has been taken into account, and the new road access will replace the existing rough farm track that runs up beside Ohio Farmhouse. The new road is, as you can see from that drawing, some distance away from Ohio Farmhouse, situated at the bottom of the page there. The new road will provide access to the proposed housing development, but also an improved access to 2 properties, the chalet and 2 Miller's cottages, as well as to adjoining farmland owned by the applicants. The proposal will improve the amenities of adjoining residents by removing the access track that runs along the boundary with the Ohio Farmhouse and 1 and 2 Miller's cottages. The development will have no material impact on any other residents. The new properties will be set well back from the boundary with adjoining homes. The existing hedgerow, which shields the development from 1 and 2 Miller's cottages, will only be retained until a new hedge has been established and only removed once privacy can be secured. Development has no objections from the lead flood authority, subject to conditions, and surface water can be contained on site. The applicants are willing to plant at least 45 metres of new mixed hedging to replace any losses, and there are no objections from the Council's tree officer. The proposals include a dark green mesh fence along the boundary with the cricket club. Now, following discussions with planning officers, we have agreed to increase the height of the fence from 2 metres to 3 metres. And you've heard from Mr. Redfern tonight his concerns and his request for a 4 metre high fence. I am a little concerned about that, I have to say, members, because of the impact 4 metres may have on the appearance and character of the area. However, I do not want it to be an issue that would lead to refusal of the planning application. Therefore, on that basis, we are willing to accept 4 metres. But my preference is clearly for 3 on the grounds that of visual impact. But I do understand the cricket club's concerns, and I'm aware of other cricket clubs where there have been problems. So I'm not discounting those issues, and I don't want the cricket club to be in any way having a problem if this development goes ahead. Now, the proposals will generate a significant amount of money towards education facilities, £78,000. There'll be a £15,000 payment towards affordable housing, as well as 2 affordable bungalows on site. There will be also funding towards an off-site children's play space. And the officer's report before you has detailed the levels of affordable housing, and we have provided 2 options. But our preferred option, along with that of your officers, is to go for the 2 bungalows. The applicants will accept either option, but the site cannot afford any further community payments. In conclusion, members, the proposals represent sustainable development which are fully in accordance with the Council's adopted planning policies. We believe the proposals will improve the amenities to adjoining residents. They have been designed to provide a mix of wheelchair accessible bungalows and houses to meet both market and affordable housing needs, and will provide a range of community payments to ensure that the housing does not add pressure to existing health, open space and education facilities. I therefore like to ask members to support the application tonight, and I hope the Planning Commission can be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Chris, anything you'd like to come back on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. A number of issues I need to come back on there. Just first to point out that members have previously visited this site on the 13th of August, and previous speaker mentioned the reason for deferment, which was to consider the suitability of the main access road for adoption. That's been confirmed as being acceptable by the local highway authority, and they're recommending conditions which we've attached to our recommendation. We have an issue with the impact of this development on a neighbouring land use. We are aware, obviously, the situation with regards to cricket balls potentially entering the site. The applicant has offered up a 3 metre high fence. Now, we feel as officers that's an acceptable height of fence based on the indicative plan that's before us. The proposal is for 5 houses along the site frontage, and the rest of the development is to be in the form of bungalows. But just to be absolutely clear, the all scale, appearance and the layout of the development is a reserved matter, so that will require subsequent approval. We feel that bungalows on that boundary, that scale of property, that degree of fencing along the north-western edge of the site will provide appropriate mitigation for cricket balls in this particular case. We can think about the orientation of properties so that they don't directly face the cricket ground, so they're not vulnerable to the risk of cricket balls, for example, smashing windows and causing damage to properties. They're all things that we can potentially consider and control by condition in terms of achieving a satisfactory layout on the site and scale of development in that area, in combination with a 3 metre high fence along that boundary. Well, the previous speaker has offered up another option, which is for a 4 metre high fence, which would satisfy the cricket club in terms of providing in their minds appropriate level of mitigation. It may mean that we don't have to think about the same level of condition in terms of the orientation of properties and scale relative to the boundary. We have recommended approval of this application. It's been previously considered by members. We are again recommending approval. I think if members are minded to approve the application, I think we do need to think about conditions in terms of mitigating the effects of this development on that neighbouring land use. Happy to take questions at this stage.
Thanks, Chris. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I've got one question, I think. That is, I'm a bit confused about what we're agreeing to here. Really, it's outline planning permission for 12 dwellings plus access, but that doesn't include the road layout. As I understand it, the road layout would be determined later when detailed planning application was brought in. Therefore, I don't understand what the council, what is being adopted, what would be adopted, what agreement there is between the county council and the developer for adopting the road. Is it just the access that they're adopting, or are they adopting the whole road?
The access into the site, so the main spine road into the site, excluding the private drives. My understanding is that's a matter for approval this evening, and the standard of that road is acceptable in terms of being up to adoptable standards.
Thank you. Councillor Slam.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question was on the road, but just to clarify it more clearly, Chris, will the Derbyshire County Council be possibly adopting it?
That's clearly the indication. It's been designed specifically to meet Derbyshire County Council's adoption standards. Yeah. Having gone through that exercise, there's a strong indication there that the developer will want to agree adoption of that main spine road to the site.
Right. My second question is the fence. The cricket club are suggesting a 4-metre fence. For health and safety reasons, it's only a chain link fence. It won't be blocking any light or any properties. So therefore, it makes sense really to go for the 4-metre, because health and safety, if one went over and hit someone under the head, you know, if we approve a 4-metre, there's less chance of that happening. And probably the bungalows will be old age pensioners, probably in the gardens, you know, in summertime. So I think it's wise to go for a 4-metre fence.
Well, I think we can give a clear indication as part of any condition that we want a fence of that height, but we'd want to agree the detail of it and the finish of it, because there is some vegetation along that boundary as well, and we want to make sure that was safeguarded.
So could it be a condition of looking
into
that for a 4-metre?
That's what we're suggesting, that a condition of some form, but I think an indication from members as to what exactly they want to see on that particular boundary.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Archer.
Just again on the fence, I used to play for Wirksworth. My kids play there for all the club. I know the ground pretty well, but I think I also know the ground referred to in East Staffordshire. I think I played there last year, and there's a housing development very close to that, but it's quite a short boundary up to that. It's got a very high fence. It must be 5-6 metre high fence. I think at the ground I played that last season. So my initial thoughts was 3 metres is not high enough. But then the position of this is perhaps the longest point of the boundary for the cricket ground. So it is a very big hit out there, but equally people can hit a cricket ball a very long way. Is there any sort of, you mentioned the potential positioning of houses and so on, is there any sort of, what's the plans at the moment, or do we not know in terms of the distance between the actual cricket ground boundary and where the actual development will be? Is there going to be any sort of buffers, natural buffer zone there, or is it literally going to back right up onto the cricket ground boundary, like someone's garden will be backing onto the boundary of the cricket ground?
Okay. From discussions I've had with the cricket club representative, and I can't verify this distance, but I've been told that it's from the square, we're talking of a distance of about 45 metres. Just to reiterate, the layout, scale of any housing in that location is a reserved matter, so we can consider orientation of houses and their scale along that boundary in addition to any associated fencing. But we feel that if bungalows were erected close to the boundary and you had that height of fence, that the risk to those properties and the occupants wouldn't be so significant to warrant refusal in this case.
Okay, yeah, I think, you know, from my experience of playing cricket at grounds with developments nearby and what I've seen at other grounds, I think I would personally go with the proposal for the higher fence. I think that is a sensible precaution from my local knowledge of this ground and playing at other grounds with similar issues where development's have already taken place. I think the higher the fence potentially, the better, as long as we can make sure it doesn't have too big an impact on the visual environment.
Councillor Purdy.
Well, I'm referring to the previous stated cases and wondering what legality there is on, or responsibility there is on this planning committee, whatever we approve. So listening to what Chris was saying, that it could be delegated authority with the officers, and if they don't get the eye right, then it's their fault, not ours. So I think it's sensible to leave it to delegation to officers. I think there's a point Councillor Archer makes that's very valid. The distance from the square to the boundary, it must determine what height is required for the fence, surely. And also there's got to be a visual impact that might be detrimental to the residents of those properties. So I prefer to leave that delegation to the officers, chair, and to the applicant, and come to a sensible solution. I'm happy with the 2 bungalows. I'd just like to question the road. There was some talk on site and comments since about the purpose of this road. Is it a gateway to a possible development in the future? Is it going to be for future agricultural use? And if so, would farm tractors come through there and spoil a new road? Just can you help us with a bit more on that detail, please?
Yeah, it's an unknown at this stage. There's a turning head at the northwestern end of the site, and obviously a spur that will lead to adjacent land. But there is no intention or no proposal at this moment in time to develop that land. It just provides access to the land, but we can't speculate or predict what may or may not come forward on that site in terms of development.
In that case, Chair, I'm happy to move the recommendations as is with delegation to officers to sort out the fence.
Councillor Slack. Councillor Pauling.
Yes, my question's now been answered, thank you.
Councillor Burford.
Thank you, Chair. I think we should make a clear decision tonight about the height of this fence. I'm minded to go along with the cricket expert, and the fact that he thinks that 4 metres is the minimum, and certainly not 3. And as far as I understood cricket, you can actually move a square, so it could go even closer to the proposed building. So a cricket square is not a permanent fixture.
Any more questions, members? No? We'll move into debate.
Well, sorry, Chair.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Well, I could have a huge debate about cricket if you like. I'm, I know a little bit about it. I think we defer this to the officers, as we've said before, and I think after a lot of toing and froing, this has been a long time in the discussion stage after our meetings in August and the previous applications before. I'm happy to go with Councillor Birdie's motion.
Right, if nobody else down to speak, Councillor.
Well, can I just be clear what we're voting for then about the height of the fence? Because I'm not happy to go for approval if we don't give a clear decision that it's 4 metres.
Well, I think what has been bandied about, Councillor Burford, is that the officers and the cricket club will speak about it and come to their arrangement. Unless you're wanting to move an amendment.
Well, I'm just wondering whether we can have a nod from the cricket club representative. Is he happy with that?
I don't think that would be appropriate.
Well, I know,
Councillor Burford.
This is what makes this.
Right, just Chris will try and explain.
I think it would be useful to all parties if we come to some form of agreement on that, what we might expect to see along that boundary to mitigate the impacts of this development on that neighbouring land use. I think as part of any approval of reserved matters application, even if we condition that as part of that application we'd expect to see a fence of whatever height it is on that boundary, and that gives a clear message and instruction to the developer.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. A few months ago I seconded, but I only seconded in anticipation that it would be a 4 metre fence at least. So I might take that seconder away if it's not a 4 metre fence. I must get agreement on that. Same as Councillor Burford said, wickets can be moved about, they are moved about, and you can be very close to that boundary really. So I'd like to take that away again secondly in this position.
Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do believe that it was given officers' recommendation to go with it, with the delegation to work together to get that. We are actually voting on outline planning. We haven't got the reserve matters in, and I do feel that if the conditions are put there to have a reasonable height fence when the full details come in, then I'm okay. And if Councillor Slack has withdrawn his seconder, then I will second Councillor Purdy upon officer's recommendation for approval for outline planning and the access.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Archer.
Sorry, someone relatively new to this. So if this is now outline planning, if we find that when the development goes forward that we can see that when the height of the fence is not acceptable, is there another opportunity for this committee to put a condition on at a later date? So if we say we can approve it tonight and see what the officers agree with the cricket club and so on, and then if we're not happy, there will be another opportunity for us to alter it later. Is that correct?
Yes, the height of the fence is such that it needs development, it needs planning permission in its own right. So, as part of agreeing landscaping for the site, we'd expect details of boundary treatments to be submitted as part of the approval of reserve matters application. I think it's just useful to give a steer to the developer as part of the outline conditions that, in terms of what we expect on that boundary, but we can say that we expect some form of fencing to be erected to mitigate the impact of that activity on this development site.
Councillor Pauling.
Yes, Chair, getting off the cricket theme, can I just ask that the comments of Councillor Ratcliffe be taken into account and included in the, amended in the agenda, please? These comments that are on here, that we haven't got Councillor Elisa McDonough and it's the Wirksworth and Middleton Rugby Club.
I'm sure we can have the paperwork altered for you.
Thank you.
Anyway, it's been moved and seconded for approval. All those in favour, please show. All those against? And I presume you've got to abstain, I see. Okay, thank you very much. So that's been approved. And last but not least, we now move on to 4.3, which is application number 19/00760. This is a full application for use of land for personal equestrian use, erection of 4 stables, hay barn and associated concrete yard at Snelston House, Sides Lane, Snelston. We have no speakers on this. Just wondered if there's any late rep, Chris, or any comments you want to make on it?
I just wanted to note that I've got a finished floor level plan. I'd like to add that to condition 1. I'm happy with the levels that have been put on the plan.
I think, yeah, we'll add that to condition 1. So, questions, members? No? No questions? We'll move straight into debate then.
I think to move the recommendations, Chair.
Second, Chair.
Anybody else wishing to speak on it? No? It's been moved for approval. All those in favour, please show. Are you in this time, Sue? That was approved unanimously. Anyway, just a bit of housekeeping to do now. We'll move on to item number 5, information on active and closed enforcement investigation. Is there anything you want to add to, Chris?
No, Chair, we've got a lot of active enforcement cases you'll be able to see from that report, but we are making some headway now in being able to close some of those cases and resolve them to a satisfactory conclusion.
All right, thank you. Moved. Second. All those in favour? Passes. And item 6, appeals progress report. Chris.
Yes, you'll note from the agenda that there's a number of successful appeals, which is a good sign of the quality of our decision making. One issue that we do need to raise is the appeal at Sunnyside Terrace. Members will recall that officers recommended approval of that application, and it was overturned at planning committee. So we will need to seek a nomination from a member to represent the council at appeal. Just so members are aware, the appeal has been lodged with a target date for a statement to be submitted to the inspectorate by the 30th of October. Officers would like to work with members. Obviously we'll help them prepare the bare bones of a statement, and we're happy to check over drafts of any statement that the nominated member wishes to make. Also, just to point out, we have received an associated award of costs application against the council. Because of the tight time frame for dealing with those application types, we've had to respond to that on members' behalf because we only had 7 days to comment on the application for award of costs. But we do need a member nomination for defending the council's case at appeal in respect of that application.
Right, thank you, Chris. I mean, I do believe on the night it was moved by Councillor Hughes and seconded by Councillor Burfoot. Mr Burfoot, don't know whether Councillor Hughes, you want to have a word with Councillor Burfoot and sort out amongst yourselves, then come back to the officer who will do the representation.
Chair, I think at this stage I've been discussing this with planning officers, and it was agreed that I would represent.
Well, in which case then that'll be noted down for you to represent. But did you say the 13th?
Can I just clarify? Sorry, Kerry's right in saying the 30th of October is a Sunday. The actual date for the statement is the 6th of November, so we have got a longer period of time.
Thank God for that.
Following this meeting, thanks for offering to present the council's case at appeal. Following this meeting, we'll send across the bare bones of a statement which will set out site history, the site and surroundings, but we will need you to comment on the appellant's case, and we'll provide you with details of their case and all the appeal documentation that you'll need as well. So we'll work with you on that and help you with formulating your reasons. Thank you.
Chair, just ask, the Sunnyside Terrace is not ringing any bells. Is it the one where the big house was, the very big house was built at the back of the terrace?
It's a case where planning permission was granted for a house on the site, and it was built larger than it was a larger property than what had planning permission, and members felt that it was.
If you went to the inspector granted permission, and he built it a little bit bigger than he should have done. Just left it that. Okay, thank you very much, members. I'll close the meeting, and thank you very much.